Hello, everybody. It's Mike Bedford, and welcome to the latest episode of the Be Brilliant People podcast, where each podcast I invite great leaders that are doing fantastic things in the people space. Tends to be usually focused around neurodiversity and kind of challenges and opportunities in the space around neurodiversity, particularly in the workplace or around coaching conversations, around leadership. Yeah, and like I said, bring in great people that are doing great things in this space as well. So I'm really pleased to invite Katie Mason along for this episode of the Be Brilliant podcast. So hi, Katie.
Hi, Mike. And I feel like going, woohoo! We've finally been given this fabulous opportunity to chat about a topic that's definitely close to my heart. So thank you.
Yeah. No, you're very welcome. I know we've been looking to make this happen for a while now, haven't we, as well? But for the benefit of our listeners who have got absolutely no idea what we're talking about and kind of why we're so excited to make this happen, let's give them some context, shall we? Let's tell them, first of all, who you are, Katie, kind of who you are, what you do, and why you're so excited about coming on this podcast today.
Yeah, so I'm Katie Mason, and I have my own coaching business, Another Way Coaching and Training Solutions, and I have done for now over a decade. Why am I so excited about what I do? You know, I love to support and challenge individuals to tap into their hidden strengths and talents so that they can thrive and live that life of fulfillment. And I do that. And I work with a range of individuals, teams, leaders, executives, to help them to get to know more about who they are and why they do what they do and connecting that. My key passion is I left a corporate role over 10 years ago and noticed that there was definitely something that was in my heart to help more individuals step over their workplace doorsteps, feeling happier about going to that place of work, because we spend so long at work, don't we?
No, absolutely. And obviously, we've spoken for a while, and I have a similar journey to yours in terms of working inside that kind of corporate machine, shall we call it, for a long time as well, and seeing some of the many challenges and opportunities, particularly around neurodiversity in the workplace. What do you think some of the things are that you've seen then now in your role as obviously having a business and having stepped outside that? What are your reflections in terms of some of those challenges and opportunities for people who perhaps don't fit into the kind of typical mold of what a professional or leader should be, someone who thinks differently from everyone else?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, that, because I'll take you back to how I felt when, I was in the corporate world, and, did I feel that I was allowed to be authentically me and get the best? Most of the time, possibly yes. However, it depends who you're communicating with. Again, I had certain leaders that, I allowed myself to play small or maybe feel that had to be different to who I actually am. Again, it's that kind of conversation of, are we all on the spectrum in our own kind of unique way? And, it really kind of troubled me when somebody was expecting me to be somebody different to who I wanted to be. Back in the corporate day, I was probably seen as that pink and fluffy leader, but got some good results through that kind of caring, nurturing kind of approach. One thing that always played on my mind, Mike, was, so if this is me, how do I be different, and how can I, challenge other people successfully without kind of impacting somebody to the way that sometimes I felt? And that's when I actually found in 2012, as I was about to set my business up, a fabulous book called Challenging Coaching by the authors John Blakey, who's now Dr. John Blakey, and Ian Day. And I thought I had a problem with potentially, you start looking in then to, where is the problem lying? Is it me that's got a problem with a certain kind of gender, male leaders at that particular time? And then I realized after reading John and Ian's content that, they were guys who also were feeling the same way as I was feeling, really, about, needing to actually be kind of bossier and challenge more. So yeah, and they've taught me a lot about how to challenge with success, but there's always been this kind of nagging bit inside of, do I need to kind of know something and be different when it comes to neurodiverse people?
Okay, there's some interesting points that I just pick up on with you there as well that you've highlighted as well. Thanks for sharing that as well. I think you mentioned about are we all potentially on the spectrum. I don't think we are. I think we're all neurodiversity is a fact, and that's just kind of that we all have think and do act differently. We're all diverse. We all have diverse brains as well. That's just kind of like a scientific fact. But I think then when you kind of go beyond that and you say, well, are we all neurodivergent? I'd say no, because then you're diverging from the vast majority, the neuro majority of people. And it's how that neurodivergence impacts you and affects you on a day-to-day basis. How does it affect your cognitive, mental functions, and kind of, how does that metamorphosize into kind of how you are and your being and your well-being? All of those different factors means that yes, you could argue that we are all neurodiverse, but we're not all neurodivergent as well. And I think some of that is often lost or maybe misunderstood in the corporate world, particularly as well. So I think, yes, I think we've all got diverse minds, absolutely, but we're not all neurodivergent. I think going back to what you're saying there about then understanding how does that then impact on other areas of your life, if you're kind of a leader or a coach or a HR leader or a manager, how do you then work with people who don't fit into the mold as well? And what does that look like in terms of what you might think is needed by a challenging conversation, for example, with someone, when actually it could be that you just don't understand that person or you don't understand what's going in their head? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And again, when you say you don't know what they're thinking and how they're behaving, the challenges I've probably faced are when I've been working with a group of people, a team, and I kind of get that kind of feeling that there is somebody struggling a little bit more, and or they tell me that they actually are on the spectrum or they've got ADHD, and that might be a reason for them not being able to maybe contain themselves, or they sometimes have to speak when maybe it's not working for the rest of the group as well, that they've got to kind of interject or interrupt, and they kind of know that they've been doing it, but they can't rein that in. And from a coach facilitator, sometimes that contracting piece then with the rest of the group can become quite challenging. And you want to bring out the best as a coach. I want to bring out the best of everybody, but I just wonder how I handle situations like that, Mike.
Yeah, so I think what we're saying there is, and that's a great example, thank you for sharing as well. I think what we're saying there is we perhaps contract from a neurotypical perspective, don't we? Contracting is very neurotypical. So thereby we're excluding neurodivergent people automatically by proxy because we're contracting in a neurotypical way. So as a coach, and for the benefit of our listeners who are listening to this and thinking, contracting, what the hell is this? Contracting is a process between let's call them a coachee and a coach, where you agree a fundamental set of principles and boundaries and rules before you actually start that process of coaching as well. Would you say that's a fair summary of contracting there, Katie?
I think that's really a good summary. Yeah, I tend to call it designing the relationship, and I do that either on an individual basis or with a team. And it's those kind of questions of what are you needing and wanting and expecting from me? What am I needing and wanting and expecting from you? What will I do for you? What can you do for me? And some of the killer questions are, if I've got some feedback for you, how do you want me to give you that feedback? Most people say, tell me as it is. However, again, what I have noticed is that, neurodivergent people sometimes struggle with you telling them as it is as well. So, I'd like your thoughts on that as well, Mike.
Yeah, so I think we've cleared up contracting for people who don't know what contracting is. So I think we have to bear in mind that perhaps we're not looking at this from an equitable and inclusive place, and are we? We're looking at this from a very kind of this is how we do it, this is kind of how it should be done, and we're not really considering, well, what about the needs of others that don't fit into that mold as well. So I think perhaps there's lessons that coaching, for example, can, and leaders and people managers as well, can learn from this, in terms of thinking outside of the box a little bit and thinking about, well, are these questions, is this group setting and how I'm positioning this really going to support this people to get the best out of everybody in this room, or am I designing it just for, you know, am I designing for the 80% rather than designing for the 100% as well? And I think that's important. I think the way around that is to involve people in those conversations, to involve those neurodivergent people in that, and say, you know, these are the sort of questions, these are the sort of contracting, but what am I doing here that is perhaps not going to include you? What sort of things could we do in there? So you gave there, for example, so from an ADHD perspective, that kind of, and this is not broad brushing all ADHD people. I'm ADHD myself as well, and it's such a diverse condition, not condition, because I don't like to call it a condition either, because that makes it sound like it's kind of like something wrong with you almost, and there's nothing wrong with it. But neurodivergence as well, you know, how do you include someone then that the tendency might want to be to get that information out when the others just want to sit back and listen as well? So there's some tricky nuances going on there as well. And what you have to remember is, if someone's wanting to get something out, it's probably the reason for that as well. Because if they can't get that out, that's going to be lost for them. And if they feel like they're losing that and not being able to be part of that conversation, then what conversations do you need to have with that person to enable the other people to feel included, but to enable them to feel included as well? So what tools and strategies need to be in place to support everybody, so that everybody feels like they can be part of that conversation?
I think that's a really, you know, tricky one though, Mike. I really, really do. You know, again, it's bringing a team together, isn't it? And because like you say, I get completely that it comes from a place of them needing to contribute. However, if that isn't kind of, if you've got a team of say 10 people and you've got maybe 1 or 2 people that are kind of interjecting in that way, what the feedback I've had sometimes, that can be really frustrating for the other people in that group as well. And it's I understand that it is about that accountability and everybody being able to contract, you know, how you're all going to work together. It's still something that I've really, really struggled with. So any hints and tips, again, you know, that you can give to me, I'm sure you'll be helping a lot more coaches as well.
Absolutely. It's all about the conversations that you're having with people, isn't it? Ultimately, you know, it's about involving everybody in those conversations as well. And it's finding then, if that isn't the right way to do it, well, what is the right way, so that person still feels valued and still feels like they can be part of that conversation? What can you put in place to support that person? Do you think about it, it's almost like having a reasonable adjustment request put in, isn't it? If I'm part of your group, then here's my list of adjustments and accommodations that you can support me with as the leader of that group. You're facilitating that group and that conversation. I say to you, and bear in mind, this is me who knows, you know, broadly speaking, what things I need to be put in place. Not everybody does either.
Yes,
as well. So if and that comes down to great conversations as well. So having conversations to try get the best possible environment for people to feel like, again, they can contribute and be part of as well. But if that person does know, that makes your life a lot easier as well. And are you, as a facilitator, as a coach, as a leader, asking people for what they need in order to succeed as well? So I think for me, that's really important.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, I definitely ask them what they need and what they want to succeed, you know, and again, my design the relationship has been highly valued by my clients, because it does have them killer questions on around feedback, or how do you want me to recognize your successes, you know, who's been your best leader and why, so that, you know, we really start to understand what works for them. I guess, you know, from your experience, when you've been in groups and you've really felt that you've needed to get something out, you know, how has that worked best maybe for you, is what I'm struggling with. Because again, from experience, I've had a situation where one person ended up having to decide to leave the group because it wasn't the right place. And that's the last thing I want, really. I want to understand and conquer this, if that makes sense.
So did you then, with that person, this person who had those challenges as well, explore with them what didn't work for them, to then reflect on, well, what can you do going forward to make sure that you can incorporate changes into the way you facilitate to mitigate some of those things.
Well, yeah, of course. Do you know what I mean? We checked in and just, made sure that that person had felt valued. We made suggestions to do things another way. My business is called Another Way, so we value all our clients to work in a different way, and also I suppose sometimes it comes down to not just neurodiversity. Again, those powerful conversations, we've got to consider what kind of place that person is in as well. So they could be neurodivergent, but there could also be different layers that are on top again. There could be some mental well-being challenges as well. So again, it adds another layer in, doesn't it, as to how you handle things as well. And sometimes it's best for, we've found it's best for more individual one-to-one approach, so that they've got all the space. Because I've had another client who was more, and again, they've shared this with me, more on the spectrum of Asperger's, and that particular person absolutely owns in on a topic and absolutely knows it 100%, but sometimes they get too fixed on a particular topic then.
It's understanding what the needs of the individual are, isn't it, as well, so that then you can best, as a facilitator or as a coach or as a leader, so you can best support them. So like you say, a group setting might not be the right setting for that person, so they might need more of a tailored one-to-one solution, or they might need to be part of a smaller group, whatever that is. We don't know, because we can't make assumptions about what anyone needs. But again, it comes back down to that, doesn't it, about having conversations, not making assumptions, asking the right questions. So then you can, as that facilitator and coach or leader, make sure that you put in place, and it's not a science, you might not always get it right as well. You have to learn from this as well as you're going along. The mistakes will be made on both sides as well. Absolutely. That you can keep aiming to create the space where someone can, be the best person, be the best version of themselves, and to be able to thrive as well. But you can only do that through experimentation and through asking questions, I think, as well. I don't think you can go in and have all the answers. I don't think no one does. I don't think a coach or a leader or a people manager in this instance always has all the answers. I think they're learning too. So it's important to understand that, you as a facilitator is learning, and you don't have all the answers, but you're willing to learn, and you're willing to understand, and you're willing to make adaptations and changes to get it right, to support that person.
Absolutely. I guess it's, I describe myself as a loving boot coach, and that's because I love to support and equally challenge my clients. And again, when we contract, as we've mentioned earlier, I ask them what good support looks like, what good challenge looks like. I guess the bit that I'm looking to develop further on is if you've got somebody that is kind of, where I said before, Asperger's, where they're absolutely fixed on a particular area, that can be challenging, from a coaching perspective. When I'm kind of giving lots of support, of asking them good questions to bring, things into the arena. But then when it goes to that kind of challenge, the finger in the ribs, they can sometimes delete that from being that challenge. That I want to move them out of the comfort zone into kind of, that learning zone, into that stretch zone. But I guess, I want to do that with my kid gloves on as well, because, I do my challenging coaching really well. But there's things, again, that I can learn if people are neurodiverse.
Yeah, I think one thing to remember is, and this is no criticism of you or anyone else as well, is that you can't neurotypicalize a neurodivergent person. So we can't just suddenly become neurotypical just because it works better and fits better to be able to do that. That just doesn't work. We're not able to. We can't just kind of change our brain and how our brain functions. So it's how can you support, and how can we work with you as a neurodivergent person to be able to get to where we're at. If we're signed up to your program, whether that's internally within an organization or whether that's with you through your business, Katie, then clearly there was an interest somewhere along the line to be part of that, and to be part of that program and interest. But I think perhaps somewhere along the line there needs to be some clear and robust conversations around the what is possible, what isn't possible, and also what can we change and what can't we change as well,
Yeah.
to make sure that people understand that as well, and they can make then an informed choice, can't they, about kind of how whether that's going to work for them.
Thank you so much for that, because that is absolutely a golden nugget. And I feel that that'll help a lot of other coaches and leaders that are listening. I love that kind of people can make choice. So,
Yeah.
you know, it isn't always going to, my workshops and coaching programs are not going to always suit everybody, as yours are
No,
not going to always suit
absolutely
everybody.
not. No.
And that's even whether people are neurotypical or whether
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
neurodivergence.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that, you know, to go a little bit deeper and maybe even put some caveats around that, you know, this isn't for everybody, and this
Absolutely.
is what we include, this is what we don't include, and also this is what it might do for you, this is what it might not do for you.
Absolutely.
And again, you know, as I always do, am I the right coach for my clients? Are they the right coachee for me?
Exactly.
I always check in on that. However, I don't know, you've kind of added another golden nugget there, another layer to that. So thanks for that, Mike. Great advice.
You're very welcome. And, you know, I think you worked it out yourself, really. And I think we, as coaches, we always, you know, as a coach, I always start from a position that I might not be the right coach for this person as well. And it's about kind of us leaving our egos at the door, isn't it, as well? And kind of working with that person-centered approach. Who's this person in front of me? Am I the right coach for this person? Being brave enough to put that out on the table and say, you know, am I the right person for you? Are you the right person for me? Because there's no point going forward with that relationship if indeed you're not a good fit for each other either. And you can take that and put that into lots of different contexts, can't you? Not just in coaching, in terms of like training, facilitation, in the workplace. It could even be a job. The job might not be a good fit. You could make all the adjustments and accommodations and everything possible, still just might not be a good fit, actually. You know, and if you aren't a good fit, it's never going to work, is it? You know, if the fit isn't there and it's not going to work for you, it's not going to work for them, then there's no point keep on battling against it and trying to kind of fight and put something into something that, you know, put a proverbial square peg in a round hole. Let's actually focus on where we actually are going to be able to be a good fit with a person, or be that in a job or a role. And therefore, then you can start to thrive, because then you can make those changes, but you're also a really good fit for that, whatever that is.
I feel something else that our conversation that we're just having here and now has made me realize that possibly I can be overthinking this too much, you know, because again, you know, it's been over the last couple of years, particularly, you know, I'm a fan of LinkedIn, and so are you. And there's a lot more kind of noise around neurodivergence and having to tiptoe around people. And
no, absolutely not.
Absolutely. And that's a key lesson. I think that's a wonderful lesson, because I do feel that I'm not alone as a coach in thinking like that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Let me, for anyone who's listening now, let me kind of set the record straight on this one. Absolutely. Let's not walk on eggshells around people like me, around neurodivergent people. We're human beings. We don't want to be treated differently. We don't want to be made to feel special or different. We've had a gutful of that. We don't want that. We want to be treated as equals. We want to be kind of able to bring our full neurospicy selves to that conversation as well. And we want people to ask us questions, to learn, to be curious, to ask those awkward questions that you might have as well. You're not going to offend us. Please ask from a genuine, if it's coming from a position of unconditional positive regard and curiosity, so you genuinely, you know, you really want to find out so that you can learn, grow, and help and support, then ask those questions. Clearly, if it isn't coming from that position, don't. But if it is coming from that position and you genuinely want to kind of work together in the best possible way and get that fit that we've talked about, and to really support that person to thrive, then of course, I don't have all the answers. And here's the big bomb mic drop moment. Neither do neurodivergent people, actually. They don't have all the answers either. So just because I'm neurodivergent, just because I'm ADHD, autistic, or dyslexic, or dyscalculic, or Tourette's, or, you know, you could go across the whole spectrum and more here. It doesn't mean that we have all the answers. You have to remember that we're on a massive learning curve every day ourselves as well. and we're learning, we're going out, and each day it's climbing up that mountain a little bit further to kind of get to that place where we understand ourselves. So when someone comes to us expecting us to have all the answers, again, mic drop moment, we don't. But equally, we welcome the curiosity, because we want people to work with us to find out and explore, be curious, and then we can work together and get the best end possible results. And if you think about that in a workplace context, so line manager, you're using the coach perspective, but you think about a manager or a HR manager or a leader being frightened of asking the questions, then you're working on assumptions. And we all know what happens when you work on assumptions, right? You get it wrong, and often disastrously. It's costly both in terms of reputational, in terms of kind of, potentially looking at employment tribunal claims because you got this so badly wrong, because you're looking at working on your entire relationship with this person based on assumptions. It's never going to work. You need to get to know people. Just like you would anybody else, whether they're neurodivergent or whether neurotypical, you need to get to know someone. You need to get to understand what makes them tick, what their challenges, what their strengths, what their opportunities, like you would anyone else. We're no different. So please don't think of kind of acting or reacting or interacting with us differently. No. Treat us exactly as you would anybody else, and we welcome that, and we welcome those conversations.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said you welcome that, because, and again, that's another thing I do in my design the relationship. I do a DISC personality profiling, so I really get to know my clients well. I do a SWOT analysis again. I have come across one or two clients that have had kind of neurodivergent different things. Differences. I like that, because like you said, I've never labeled. I don't like labeling again.
Condition is horrible. Condition is horrible.
So I've never used. I don't use that word. And when you said that, it made me feel very prickly.
I cringed myself when I said it, but that shows how we're expected to conform to, like, the neuro majority, and almost kind of like self-sacrifice who we are and ourselves as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, I talk about, the empowerment dynamic, about, being able to, feel different from being that victim, to be open to new solutions, new opportunities, and, and rather than kind of persecuting people, be that person that can challenge. That's why I wanted to have this conversation with you today, because we're talking about powerful, we're talking about difficult, we're talking about challenging conversations in a neurodiverse world. Again, when you said think about examples, there have been times where I felt that there's been a bit of a fine line, because some of the people that have been neurodivergent have maybe jumped onto what I call, the drama triangle with that as well, and maybe might start rescuing themselves. And I think that kind of can be something that coaches may struggle with as well, if that particular person is starting to go to that pity party. And again, I suppose that's the conversation, but I just wanted to get your take on it, Mike.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful with that. I really do. I think, because I think you mentioned there about the drama triangle and the pity party. Actually, I think we talked about earlier on about how we have to be aware, and this is from a coaching perspective, that there could be lots of different things going on for someone there. They're not just turning up as kind of someone who's neurodivergent and looking for pity. I don't think most neurodivergent people I know aren't looking for pity, but they have had a history of trauma leading to where they are now as well. So there's lots of different things going on. So it could be there's a blend there of, actually, is it coaching that this person needs, or is it counseling or therapy? Is that what's being brought to this conversation? And if it is, then you're probably not the right person to be having that conversation with them, unless you're a trained counselor or therapist. If it's coaching, then that's a completely different conversation altogether. But I think it's really important, and I know you wanted to ask about this, about coaches working with neurodivergent people. It's really important to understand that you don't wear all of those hats, and that you need to understand when it's right to hand off. And if you can smell that, and you can sense that, and you can taste that, and you think, that's not the right conversation, or you feel way out of your depth having that conversation with someone, then don't have it. Don't have that conversation with someone. Suggest to them that, actually, I don't think I'm the right person for you to be having that conversation with. And have you thought about, speaking to a therapist or a counselor about some of these issues or challenges that you're having? I can help you with X, Y, Z. And I think that's really where the clear contracting is really important, particularly for neurotypical coaches who are looking to work with neurodivergent clients. It's really important to have that robust contracting up place and to make it really clear that your role is as a coach is to assist with X, Y, and Z, but it's not to assist with therapy, counselling, anything in the psychological space or mental health space. You're not there to do that. It's out above your pay grade. It's you're not there to do that. I think it's really important to understand what your limits are as a coach, and you could then transfer that into kind of like a HR leader or a people leader or a manager or whatever in the workplace. Same rules apply, I think, as well. So it's really important to understand what your limits are and to set, particularly with neurodivergent people, I think, to set very clear boundaries and to have very clear communication with someone about what the boundaries are, what the rules are around this relationship as well, so that people understand, so that there's no grey areas. Because I think, particularly for me, things that don't work well are like grey areas. And when there is no clarity and when things aren't clear and I don't understand, and it's left kind of quite open, I think for me that can be quite challenging as well. I need to understand what the boundaries and what the rules are as well, so I can operate within that as well. And again, that's not the same for everybody. But I think as a coach looking to work with and expand into potentially working with neurodivergent clients, it's really important to understand the many different nuances of working with neurodivergent clients.
And I love that, because in my contract, and I kind of I mentor new coaches to do the same, to put in a paragraph around, in no way am I to be conveyed as a counsellor, as a therapist. And I do EFT and I do NLP. So I am a practitioner, so I can work at a deeper level with clients. But I feel that you've made a really good point for maybe newer coaches or leaders to make sure that they're not stepping into a space that could be, dangerous really for them as well. So it's good, because, obviously this podcast is about having them powerful conversations. And these could be some telltale signs, I suppose, from our conversation that we've just had, in terms of, am I getting it right? Am I not getting it right? One of my clients once said to me, well, Katie, you're possibly on the spectrum. You kind of show sometimes some of those traits. So I know that I'm a person that likes to interject, and if something comes into my head, I sometimes have to let it out as well. So it's all interesting, isn't it? How do you have that conversation so the power stays kind of, I suppose, equal for both parties?
It has to be. It has to be an equal relationship at all times. It does. Again, that's not even a kind of a neurodivergent or neurotypical thing. Equality and equity. I think it has to be an equal relationship as well. And it boils back down to, I think, doesn't it, at all times having those powerful conversations, and asking the right questions, so that you can then, you might not get it right. You have there's an understanding that it could be clunky, it could be awkward, and you might get things wrong. But I think you have to be brave enough as a leader, as a manager, as a coach, to again leave your ego at the door and be prepared to get some things wrong as well, to support this person to get the best possible end outcome for them. Ultimately, that's what it's about.
And that's made me think of something else. When you are contracting as well, that's something that I do say to my clients. I'm not perfect. I'm not always going to get things right. I'm sure you agree the same. You're not always going to get things right.
I don't go right.
Yeah. It's about really understanding, though, how you get that relationship back on track, isn't it? So that you can keep the power into that conversation and not feel too far out of your depth, because
absolutely,
I want to get people into that peak performance zone. So I know we've got to support and challenge them, because too much challenge will send people into a stress zone, which might again be different for neurodiverse people. That's something that kind of comes up for me. Not enough challenge, you're not going to be encouraging people. They're going to go into that inertia, apathy. And if we support somebody in that space, if we keep them in cozy club, they're also not going to grow. So do you see the challenge that I'm facing?
And I'll add a few extra challenges onto it for you as well. And I think particularly And this goes out to, coaches who are looking to kind of, work with neurodivergent clients, perhaps. And again, it applies to leaders and managers as well. Understanding that people who are on the spectrum, it's quite a spiky profile as well. So, you're up and down constantly as well. So, while at the moment I could be kind of like top of the world, high energy levels, then after this conversation, I can also hit bottom. And if you really want to get the best out of people, it's understanding how to surf that wave with them as well. So particularly as a coach, do you have, and again, this is a question for you as a coach, do you have the right skills to be able to set aside the neurotypical coaching school models of kind of how you work with a client, to actually put that to one side and say, actually, this is a client-led relationship as well. So it's a coachee-led. So actually my client is kind of like this, and it's not going to go like this, that conversation as well. So do you have the skill set, the toolkit and the mindset to be able to do that as well? So you've got to ask yourself questions as well, haven't you, as a coach, as a leader, as a people lead all the time. Have I got the right skills? Have I got some gaps in terms of kind of my knowledge and skills as well? And what are you doing to kind of close those gaps as well, and recognize that you don't have those skill sets, but what are you doing to close them as well, if you're truly committed to your clients' performance and end outcomes, but also your own continuing professional and personal development as well.
Yeah, and again, that's something that I'm passionate about, as you know, Mike, because I'm a coaching supervisor. I've been coaching for 23 years as a qualified coaching supervisor. I would again reiterate everything you've said. It's a case of, when we look at different supervision models, one of them encourages you to think about how your client might be entering that space. And again, that's elevated that part for me, without putting a label on it. Again, that doesn't matter whether you're neurotypical, neurodivergent, the same rules apply. And how are you turning up to that session, and what is your relationship like? So yeah, absolutely. I encourage anybody in the coaching space to make sure that they go into supervision, and then they can talk about some of these maybe powerful conversations they've had, and learn and put some additional things on their personal development plans as well, which is key.
Absolutely. It's a continuous learning journey for all of us, I think, is the kind of the golden thread that's running throughout this conversation, as well. And, I'd reiterate that, neurodivergent people don't have all the answers. We're learning all the time as well, but equally we're always willing to share what we know with people if it comes from a place of good intent and wanting to support and learn and grow yourself and help us to learn and grow. Then we're very happy to get into a conversation and to share that and to help each other, because we need more allies as well. We need people to actually get up and stand up and fight for us who aren't neurodivergent as well. We need more neurotypical allies supporting us as well, and to support where we get to that place of equity and equality as well. So it's not just about us, it's about kind of having good allies that understand, can support, and are equally willing to learn and share and grow themselves as well. So yeah.
And again, as a coach, that hasn't gone through any assessments for neurodiversity, so again, I don't want to put a label on me as being neurotypical, because I'm probably not. Again, it's about coaches feeling comfortable in being able to coach everyone, really, isn't it? Really, in a way, whatever they bring to the party. I probably kind of want to dispel the myth in some ways of that. Does a neurodivergent person need a neurodivergent coach? Because I think that question comes up a lot in the coaching space these days.
Let's tackle it.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So I would say it depends. It depends on the individual. It depends on what their needs are, and equally everything that we've just talked about. It depends if the coach has the right skill set to be able to deal with that as well. So, for example, if I'm working with you as a coach and I start talking to you about kind of my, some of the things that are happening for me as a neurodivergent person that you might not understand, that are affecting the kind of the impact on the coaching relationship, or what you perceive is impacting on the coaching relationship, it comes down to that. Am I the right person, and are we a good fit for each other as well? So I think it depends would be my honest answer on that. I don't kind of take the view that neurodivergent and neurotypical can't work together. I think I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think it depends. It's a person-centered approach, and it's about whether you've got the right chemistry, whether you're the right good fit for that person, and equally as a coach, have I got the right skill set and toolkit and mindset to be able to support that person to be the best. Obviously, if I'm neurodivergent and I'm a neurodivergent coach like me, who works with ADHD and neurospicy professionals as a coach, then I tend to get a lot of my clients are neurodivergent, are on the spectrum, because they gravitate towards me because I get it, right? So I get I don't mean I'm them or I'm kind of walking in their shoes, because being neurodivergent is so unique. It's such a unique experience for each individual person as well, and no two people are the same as well. So no two neurodivergences are the same. So equally, I feel that I'm not them, but I get it, and I get kind of some of the challenges. I've got that empathy, and I've got that connection with people that perhaps a neurotypical person might not necessarily have. Doesn't mean that they won't, or that they haven't, or that they can't. But equally, if I'm a neurodivergent client looking for a coach, what are some of the things I'm looking for a good fit for me as well? So I wouldn't rule it out that you can't work together. I think absolutely you can, but I think there has to be a clear sense of kind of understanding whether you are a good fit for each other, whether that's neurodivergent or whether you're neurotypical. You just might not be a good fit for each other.
Yeah. Again, it's suspending that judgment, isn't it, really? And suspending, again, something, a exercise I quite often encourage my clients to do is just for a day, suspend all your values, your beliefs about what is going on in the world. And I tend to aim to come from that perception. But what you've just said there, obviously it makes sense, because it is that sometimes first seek to understand before you can be understood. And if some people are following you and they see that you're great because you're neurodiversity spicy, you call it.
Neurospicy.
Neurospicy, you call it.
Chili badge there.
Chili. the chili, the red hot chili. Just because you're red hot chili.
Yes.
Again, it makes sense, again, because it's, I wouldn't go and coach a football team. Again, my kind of specialities and coming through the leadership world and management, people like that gravitate towards me. Of course, people are going to gravitate. However, I think what we've kind of ascertained from our conversation is that doesn't need to be the case always, does it? We know a good coach doesn't always need to be the same as you in a way.
Absolutely. Let me flip it around for you. So, for example, my coaching supervisor, who I'm going to be working with, is neurotypical.
Okay.
Right.
Brilliant.
I have the chemistry, I have the connection, and that person has the empathy and the understanding that I need to be able to work with them. And I know, because it's tried and tested, I've worked with them before, and we've got that relationship in place. We've got that chemistry in place. I know that I can work with them and still support me to be the best version of me and get to where I get to, and have that safe space to have those conversations without non-judgment as well. But again, that's about whether it's a good fit. So this person was just a really good fit for me, but I took that time to get to know that person and kind of get to ask them the questions. I asked them, do they think they can work with me as well? And I kind of set that out on the table about kind of what, kind of how I work and kind of what some of my challenges and strengths and opportunities as well. So it's a two-way thing always. I think it's a two-way dialogue. It's not just a neurotypical person that has to be the one that is expected to give everything and try to find everything out. No, it's a two-way shoot. It's a two-way conversation and dialogue at all times between all parties as well. So you can both then find what works and what doesn't. And if that works, great. If it doesn't, then happy days. It's been nice talking to you. We'll go on and I'll try to find somebody else that does. Right.
And that would be the same of, a neurotypical to a neurotypical person anyway, wouldn't it? Or to neurodivergent, or, one of
Absolutely.
each, really.
Absolutely.
Because our conversation is about how do we have them powerful conversations, isn't it? Is what I wanted to kind of unpick with you today on your podcast, Mike. I think I've learned a lot from you.
I think it's having them. I think the lesson, throughout this, I don't know if you'd agree with me, Katie, and I'm jumping in there. My ADHD is completely taking over there. I've got a badge. I do have ADHD. So
Do you really? Oh, okay, that's interesting.
I got a badge to prove it.
Maybe I need a badge to say I don't know whether I've got it or not.
well, I think in all seriousness, I think we've talked about a great many things, haven't we, today? But I think for me, the thing that runs throughout all this, before I completely lose the thread off out of my own mind, is it's don't be afraid to ask the question and have the conversation. I think not doing that is more dangerous than doing it as well. And we've talked about fear. I think fear is really an important point that we can't ignore as coaches, as leaders. As I'm a former HR leader as well, former people manager, former people leader, HR manager. I understand the fear that takes place that prevents those conversations taking place. But really, the best thing to do is to have them, to avoid then going to a position where you work on assumptions, because that never works. It never gets the best outcomes for anybody, for you or for the individual. So don't conquer your fear. Feel the fear and do it anyway, I think, is kind of, to kind of shamelessly quote that famous book. It's really about getting in there, getting stuck in, and not being afraid to have the conversations. Obviously, always doing it from a position of psychological safety. If you're kind of in the workplace and you're in an office full of 100 people, don't just suddenly get up as that. Let's have a conversation about your neurodivergence. That's completely the wrong thing to do. It's about operating from a position of psychological safety and building that trust and rapport. And bear in mind, not everybody walks around with a badge on saying that I've got ADHD. A lot of people might just kind of recognize some of the traits and feel, or they might kind of feel like there's something a little bit different from others and things like that, but they might not have a diagnosis and things like that. Not everyone has a diagnosis. In fact, we know statistically that only a very low % of people actually have a diagnosis as well. So actually, it is kind of understanding the person and always adopting that person-centered approach, asking the questions, creating the space for psychological safety, and then not being afraid to ask those challenging questions and conversations. And I'm talking about challenging from a constructive, positive position as well. Asking those questions so that you can learn, you can support, and equally that person feels that they can trust you, and they will open up, and it creates that space then where you can both move forward together.
And that's music to my ears again, Mike. I know I've used that saying before, because I don't feel I need to change anything, to be honest. I feel that my contracting is really good. Again, from a point of view of being able to raise the tension when is needed and when to lower the tension. I know how to calibrate the tension. So just to continue doing that. And for example, not to be afraid of, if I meet somebody out there and they have a badge like yours, ADHD, that I could say, tell me more about, your badge, Mike, and really getting to know the individual, isn't it? Like it would be typically for any coaching client. So I feel that we've kind of conquered throughout this conversation in kind of summary for me. The powerful conversations are with neurodivergent people are very, very typical to neurotypical people. Just, don't be afraid, contract well for coaches out there, and just know maybe when the time is maybe to say you're not the right coach for them, or, don't feel sad if they say you're not the right coach for them.
And here's the thing, many neurodivergent people say to me that I'm not the right coach for them too, right?
Oh, that's interesting.
That's absolutely fine, because equally I just might not be a good fit for them. It might not even be about the kind of me as a person. It just might not be that I'm just not the right person for them. And we have to let go of that kind of feeling of kind of just that I need to be needed sort of thing. It doesn't matter.
Yes. Yeah.
It's ultimately about the person at the end of the day and what's best for them, right? We should always be operating from a position of, well, what's best for that person. If I'm the best kind of resource to support that person, that's fantastic. If I'm not, that's equally as fantastic as well, because they can go on and find a person that is, and then they can thrive with that person that is as well. It's been happy to let that go and being happy to accept that as well. And I think then we can create a better world, I think, if we do that as well. And going back to my point as well, if you're not sure about anything, don't be afraid to ask as well.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. No, thanks very much. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Good.
I think I've kind of unraveled a lot for myself, and hope for a lot of other coaches as well. To work and have the powerful conversations with the neurodivergent individuals.
Yeah, fantastic. It's been great to have you on the podcast, Katie. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I know for us it don't feel like we're doing a podcast. It just feels like
No.
we're having a conversation. And for the benefit of our listeners, we've had loads of these where we said afterwards, why didn't we just record that? I wish we'd have recorded that. So we've probably had about 4 hours worth of podcasts before we actually managed to finally drag ourselves on air and actually record it as well. But no, again, it's been a pleasure having you on, Katie. But for the benefit of our listeners again, how can our listeners connect with you, find out about what you do, get in touch with you if they wanted to, just tell us a little bit, a bit of a plug for Katie Mason and Another Way Coaching and Training.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm so grateful, obviously, that you're asking me to do this as well. But I'm Katie Mason from Another Way Coaching and Training Solutions. I am very active on LinkedIn. That's my main social media. I need to branch out a little bit more. And I also have a website as well. So you can find me at www.anotherway.me.uk as well. And it's been such a pleasure just to unravel and just chat. As you've said, Mike, it's felt so natural, and probably, like you say, 4 or 5 hours into all of this.
Yeah, you're getting the end result here, listeners. You're getting the end result of a lot of build-up time to get to this point. So we hope that you've enjoyed the conversation as much as we've enjoyed having it anyway. So once again, thank you, Katie, for joining us on the podcast, and thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in. And be sure to stay tuned and look out for more new episodes coming soon. And I hope this has added some real value to you and to what it is that you do as well. And don't hesitate to get in touch with me at bebrilliantpeople.com or find me on LinkedIn. If there's any questions that you've got about me and what I do, or if you'd like to work with me in terms of the work I do in the corporate and training space around neurodiversity. Equally, if you're a neurodivergent individual and you're looking for a professional neurodivergent coach who can help and support you, then get in touch. And lastly, if you're looking for a neurospicy speaker to come along to one of your corporate events or conferences, then get in touch. I do bring my own lived experience and neurospiciness along to that as well. So if you're interested in finding out about my speaking services, then get in touch. But other than that, thank you so much again, Katie. And I wish you all a happy onwards journey, and hope you will listen to us again soon. Bye for now.
Yeah, bye everybody.